a large part of financial aid eligibility, what schools are actually trying to determine through collecting your information about your family and about your finances, what they're basically trying to determine is how much, they're not really trying to determine how much aid you'll get. They're really trying to determine how much they believe that you should be able to pay towards tuition. And so in order to do that, they kind of look at, there are sort of like 5 primary factors to figure this out. One is how much income do you have, right? Because obviously somebody with $1 million of income is going to have a different ability to sort of contribute than somebody with $100,000 or $10,000 of income. So income is the number one big driver. So there are a lot of questions on the form about all different sources and types of income that you might be receiving, that you need to report on. This is income, salary and wages from work. If you own a business, any net profit from the business that comes into your family income, any non-taxable income sources that you might be receiving, child support that you might be receiving, anything like that. So it's really interest and dividend income that you get from investments and savings and things like that. So income is a big driver. Another big driver is expenses. And so schools understand these processes, understand that just because you make $100,000 doesn't mean that you have $100,000 to use for tuition. And so it looks at what your expenses might be. And the different service providers have different formulas that look at this somewhat differently. But the general idea is that families that have, or families that are larger, will have larger household expenses than families that are smaller. Like that's an assumption that's built into some of these forms. And so one of the things that's important about that is that that's one of the reasons why forms ask a lot about how many members of your household live with you, who do you support, what kind of special, what kind of unusual or special expenses might you have related to supporting your family and supporting your household. The idea is to kind of say in each household, there's a bucket of money that we know that they need to use for housing and clothing and food and paying taxes and maybe even other emergency expenses that might pop up that you might have to pay, medical, dental expenses, things like that. And so that whole expense bucket is part of the assessment as well. Another area that's a big factor is your, I shouldn't say it's a big factor. It is a factor. It's not as big as income, is what you own, as I touched on a little bit earlier. So there'll be questions about, do you own or rent your primary home? Do you own other properties, vacation or second homes or things like that? Again, if you own a business, there's some of what's the net worth of your business and the value of the perhaps property that you might own through your business. And so there'll be a lot of questions about that. Do you have savings, investments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, things like that? So the idea there is to say it's one thing to just have income. It's another thing to have some of these other things, these assets that can actually help supplement your income if you have a large enough set of those things. And so there'll be a lot of questions about that. So schools will look at that as a piece of your financial strength puzzle. Now, just like income is offset by expenses, assets can be offset by debts. And so there'll be some questions on there about what kind of debt you have: student loan debt, mortgage, anything really, any other kind of debt, consumer or credit card debt. Like all those kinds of questions are there so that the schools can see, even though we might have a family might have a certain amount of assets and savings, that is offset by a certain amount of debt that they still owe. So they will look into that. Another big area that they'll ask about that is a big factor here too is how many children, not just how many children you have, for them to get a sense of your household size that you need to support with your income.